Most of us have never heard the voice of God audibly. In fact, I have to admit that I'm often concerned when I hear people saying, well, God told me, fill in the blank. Often it seems that those folks are really telling me what they've always thought. You ever encounter folks like that? The ones who are so sure about what they think that they're sure that it was God telling them directly? That can be troubling. But in the psalm today, we hear of God speaking. God speaking in the movements of nature and the wind that whirls the oaks of Lebanon about. A voice of God that troubles the waters, a voice of God that is unmistakable. Yet we find in our lives that isn't usually the case. That when we hear God, it's softer, it's gentler. It's usually one of those little prodding voices that makes us say, maybe I should think differently about something. Because one thing I can tell you, very rarely does the voice of God just say, yeah, you got it right. Nearly always the voice of God speaks to us saying, you know, maybe you should consider something else. It's nearly always a voice of challenge. But we find in today's gospel reading one of the few times when the voice of God is a voice of unalloyed approbation. When it's Jesus making his way down to the water to be baptized. I can imagine being there that day by the side of the Jordan River. And perhaps some of you have actually been at the Jordan in your travels. But I can imagine being there. It's not a big river. It's kind of skinny. It's kind of brown and muddy. With John preaching to the folks gathered. No doubt continuing as he had started by calling them a brood of vipers. Telling them that they need to get right with God. Telling them that they need to change their ways, that they need to be dunked down into this river so that they can rise washed of their sins, so that they can have a fresh start with God. I imagine John standing there, yelling his sermon to the crowd, and if you don't have a microphone, it always gets yelly. I imagine him yelling to the crowd about how they really needed to get their lives in order. And maybe off to the side that morning he had seen Jesus, his cousin. Maybe he had kind of wondered, gee, I wonder what Jesus is doing here. Sort of like every other preacher in the world who, when they have a familiar guest from another part of their life show up in the back of the sanctuary on Sunday morning, they think, oh, I have to talk to her later. I'm sure that's what John was thinking when he saw Jesus there. There must be some family news. We're going to need to talk after we're done. But then Jesus came down and asked to be baptized. That's one of those things that you just don't expect. It would be like having my brother come in and join us for worship and decide that he needed to, at that very moment, turn his life over to God in a very Baptist-y way. My brother is a Baptist minister. It would be that unexpected that Jesus would come and ask John to baptize him. These two young men had grown up together. They knew each other well. John knew who Jesus was. There was no surprise there. You remember when Mary had visited Elizabeth, John, still in utero, leapt in his mother's womb because he knew even then who Jesus was. So now, these two 30-year-old men coming together at the Jordan, and Jesus asked John, please, I want to be baptized. And John, realizing that this baptism of repentance was serious business, asked his cousin, "What? You want me to baptize you?" But Jesus said, "Look, we need to do this for the sake of righteousness. I need to be baptized and I need you to do it." And so they waded out into the muddy stream. And John took Jesus and lowered him down under the water and raised him dripping, the water pouring off of Jesus' face. And Scripture tells us that it was at that moment that the heavens opened and the Spirit of God descended in the form of a dove. And the voice of God said, "You are my Son, my beloved. In you I am well pleased." And that's where our reading ends. Of course, the next step is when Jesus immediately turned and went out into the desert to be tempted by the devil. But he went out with that affirmation of God ringing in his ears. He went out with that reminder of who he was, holding him fast. Most of us don't remember our baptisms. Any of you remember when you were baptized? Okay, a few, handful. Different religious traditions do it differently. My family story is that when I was little and my parents were attending a local Presbyterian church down in Richmond, Virginia, my great uncle, who was a UCC missionary in Hong Kong, had come home on furlough. And my Uncle Carl is the one who baptized me in that church when I was just a little thing. Of course, later on when we joined a Baptist church, the Baptists, as Baptists will do, said, "That doesn't count. You got to do it again." And so both of my parents and my brother and I were all baptized. We were taken into the baptismal pool that was built into First Baptist Church in Ashland, Virginia, and we were lowered down wearing these white robes that, just in case you're curious, had lead weights sewn into the hem so that it wouldn't balloon up, because that would look weird. I remember that baptism. But I have to admit that as I take stock of my own spiritual life, it's the first one, the one that I don't remember, that probably holds more truth for me. Because that was the one when my parents came and brought me forward and said, "We want to raise Paul as part of the family of God." It was that one where my great uncle, traveling halfway around the world, placed the water upon my head, uniting me not only in faith, but in family. Those of you who remember your baptisms, I'm sure, have strong memories associated with that. Whether it was having water placed upon your head or being lowered beneath the waters of baptism. But those of you who don't, those of you whose families made promises on your behalf, those promises carry over in your lives today. We find that no matter who does the promising, whether it's our parents or us, that those promises guide us. They anchor us into the world of Christian faith. They remind us what it means to be part of this sacred family. Today, as we mark Jesus' baptism, we're reminded of our own. When we hear the words of God speaking to Jesus, "This is my Son. You are my beloved. In you I am well pleased." We hear those words for ourselves. "You are my daughter, my beloved. In you I am well pleased. You are my son. In you I am well pleased." Not because of anything that we've done, but because of who we are. I remember when I was a small child, still riding the school bus, my brother and I would make our way across the field because our house was set way back, living in rural Virginia. And my mother invariably would call out to us, "Remember who you are! Take God with you!" And of course, Greg and I had our moments of going, "Oh, Mom." Don't we do that to our kids? We embarrass the heck out of them sometimes. But that embarrassment is often what seats memories. Remember who you are. You are a beloved child of God. With you, God is well pleased. Take God with you. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, realize that you are in God's presence and you are a sign of God's presence for everyone else. For you are baptized. You are the family of Christ. You are God's very own children, much beloved. We then, as people of God's love and grace, live out our baptisms in the world, no matter where we go, no matter what we do. Amen.